The darkness continues. What can be worse?
Peace. Vote. This is X once again with another. The tale I'm about to tell y'all was told to me a long time ago, and it has to do with doing worse. Now, I know we always talk about here on these media airways, we're always talking about how people can get better and how things can potentially be better. But at the same time, things can be drastically worse. That's just the reality. And a lot of times I think we lose sight of that, just like we often lose sight of how much better things can be. I think we forget that things can also be much worse. For instance, like I told you, I'm going to tell y'all a tale. And this tale is about a couple who went overseas to adopt a child. Because a lot of times people won't adopt a child from America. They choose to go overseas because for some reason they think that the need is greater overseas as opposed to in America. But that's another story and another topic for another time. But
Think about this.
this couple went across seas to adopt a child, right? So they walk into an orphanage, and when they get inside the orphanage, they get with one of the medical staffs inside the orphanage. And when they get with the member of the medical staff, they walk through, and these children happen to be children who were caught up in the war. So they walk through the orphanage and they're looking at these children, and they stop at one bed where there's a child in the bed. The medical staff tells them that this child here only has one leg. And the couple are there, and the wife asks,
What can be worse?
so they move down to the next bed, and there's another child laying in a bed, and that child has no legs. And the woman says to the medical staff,
What can be worse?
so they move down to another bed, and when they get there, this child has no legs and only one arm. So the lady turns to the medical staff and she says,
What can be worse?
so they move down to another bed. And when they get to that bed, there's a child laying there. And this child has no arms, no legs. So the lady says to the medical staff again,
What can be worse?
so they move down to another bed. And when they get to that bed, there's just a head there with no body. And the lady's like, oh my God.
What can be worse?
So they move down to another bed. And when they get to that bed, there's just two pairs of eyes on the pillow. And the lady looks to the member of the medical staff and says,
What can be worse?
and the medical staff replies, he's blind. He's blind. He's blind. He's blind. Now I know y'all hear that and y'all like, X is fucked up. I tell that tale because there's always something that can be worse. No matter how bad it gets, it could always be worse. And I think we as people don't understand that all the time. Of course, there's people out there doing bad. There's people out there who are poor. There's people out there who are sick. There are people who it just seems like it's impossible for them to get ahead. It's impossible for them to get a job. It's impossible for them to get a life. I get it. I understand it. I mean, I've been fortunate in my life. I've always been able to make a living. I've always been able to take care of myself and others. So I've been fortunate. Now, these things don't come without work. I mean, you have to work towards making your life that particular way. So I think I'm more so fortunate because I learned how to work for what I want and work for what I have. I've learned that. But in these days and times, you have a tendency to see people who have not necessarily done that. Now, make no mistake, brothers are probably doing better now than they've ever done, as a collective. Brothers overall are probably doing better now than they've done in quite some time. But there's still some of us out there, man, who may not be in that category. There's some of us out there who may be doing worse than we've ever done. There may be some brothers out there who are pretty much in the same place they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So there is that. But I say again, if you are a brother who has a job, has a career, able to take care of yourself, have your own money, have your own car, have your own house, I don't think you have a lot to complain about because of the folks who are doing a lot worse than you. And I think we need to keep that in mind. And I say we because I'm included in that too.
Think about this.
I consider myself to be very ambitious. I grow my business every year. I try to grow my life every year. And often I get caught up in, damn, I should have did this many sales this year. Damn, I should have had this many contracts this year. Not even realizing that I could have 0 sales. I could have 0 contracts. So it brings me back to the original point in the original title of this video, that it could be worse, man. Things could be worse for you. I see a lot of brothers out there that are homeless. I see brothers standing on the side of the road, on the overpass with the signs. I mean, that could be any of us. And for a lot of us, we only one check away from that. We're only one loss of income from that. We're only one bad business deal from that. Many of us. Because I'm pretty sure a lot of those dudes you see standing on the side of the road, man, when they were children, I doubt if they wanted to grow up to be a panhandler that stood on the side of the road over top of the overpass. I doubt when they were children they wanted to grow up to be the guy standing outside of the supermarket asking for $1. I doubt when they were children that they wanted to be sleeping underneath the bridge or sleeping at the train station on a 20-degree night. I don't think anybody wanted to be that when they grew up. Now, mind you, a lot of those people who are there, they're there because of bad decisions they've made. A lot of those people are there because they have some type of mental illness. A lot of people are there because they're caught up in drugs or wrapped up in drugs or alcoholism or whatever the case may be. And a lot of the people there,
Think about this.
it's a combination of all of the above. But let's be honest here. Some of the people who are there, They are there because of the decisions they've made in their life. And I know we don't like to hear that. I know we don't like to hear that, because any person that seems to be down, or any person that seems to be impoverished or in dire straits, we like to lay the blame at the feet of something else besides that person. And I don't think we're doing them any favors by doing that, especially a person who, it's not really what happened to them. It's more so how they dealt with what has happened to them. Because make no mistake, man, stuff happens to all of us. All right? Stuff happens to all of us. I don't think there's anybody listening here that something hasn't happened to them. But I was always under the impression that experience isn't what happens to a man. Experience is what a man does with what happens to him. So there's no one who hasn't had things happen to them in their life. I think that how we deal with it ultimately makes the difference, and it ultimately defines you as a person. And a lot of those people, man, they made some decisions in their lives. They had some things happen to them in their lives. And some of those people, the reason why they're out there on the side of the road with the sign, because the things that happened to them, the way they dealt with it, landed them right on the side of the road. Because make no mistake, man, most of the time, maybe not all of the time, but most of the time, your destiny is the sum total of the decisions that you have made in your life. Everything you've done in your life has prepared you for where you are right now, good, bad, or indifferent. Everything you've done in your life built up to where you are right now. And I know we don't like that either. We don't. I know we don't like to hear that either. But it's true. It is true. Just like people who have gotten rich over the course of their life, many of them, probably most of them, it's due to the decisions that they made in their life. Likewise, the people who are poor, a lot of them, it's due to the decisions that they've made in their life. It can't be blamed on something else. It can't be. Not in all cases. I'm pretty sure there's some cases where a person just hit a rough patch, had a bit of bad luck. They might have lost a job. They might have, lost a stream of income. They might have gotten sued. Child support may got them, in dire straits. I mean, there's a whole host of things. But if you trace any of those things back, some decisions were made in the process, man. Some decisions were made in the process that made your life what it is today. And that's with most of us. I don't think that's the minority of people. I think that's most people who find themselves in a bind. Usually it's due to some decision you made yesterday, last week, last month, last year, 10 years ago. But ultimately, wherever you are right now, it could be worse. Even a guy who lives in his mom's basement and he's 40. He could be out on the side of the road sleeping underneath a tree. He could be sleeping underneath the bridge. He could be one of those guys standing on the side of the road with the sign saying he'll work for food. Even that guy who's standing on the side of the road with the sign, as bad as he is, as bad as his situation is, and his situation is probably a situation none of us want to be in, even him, standing on the side of that road with that sign. He could be standing on the side of that road with a sign and 2 feet of snow.
Think about this.
It could be raining. He could be a person who is blind with the sign. He could be a person in a wheelchair with that sign. He could be holding that sign up with one arm. Or better yet, he could be in a geographical location where they don't even allow that. What would he do then if he was somewhere where he couldn't stand with a sign on the side of the road and ask for money? But the point is this: it could always be worse, man. It could always be worse. And sometimes many of us get to the point where the only direction we can head is up. Now, I know it sounds counterintuitive to say those kind of things, because many of us, we talk about the betterment of the black man. But sometimes I think as black men, we do a little too much complaining. We complain a bit too much about how better things can be, especially in these days and times. Because I think we can all agree, no matter what our station in life is, whether we're rich, poor, middle class, young, old, tall, short, fat, skinny, flushed with cash, or flat out broke. At any given time, our lives can be worse. It can be worse. And the fact that it can be worse should give us somewhat of a perspective of our own lives. I'm sure everybody can be doing a little better. I'm sure the man who's got $10 million can have 20. I'm sure the NBA star can score 30 points a night as opposed to 20. I'm sure the man who has his own business can have a bigger business. So I know y'all understand what I'm saying. Of course, as men, we can always do better, get better. But the reality of the situation is, it can always be worse.
What can be worse?
What can be worse? What can be worse? What can be worse? What can be worse?
The darkness continues. Think about this. Think about this. Think about this. Think about this. Open your minds.
Only from T.P.O.T. Media. Open your mind.